Welcome to the Rational Egoist. I'm your host, Michael Liebowitz, and it's no secret that I spent a significant time in prison, that I've been very critical of the Department of Correction, and that I'm very interested in prison reform. And I'm also interested in how prisoners readjust after serving long sentences. So today we've got a special guest, somebody who I was incarcerated with, who's gotten out, has a job, is doing well for himself, and he's going to talk to us about the experience. Luis Mattei, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, that's the last time I'm going to call you Luis. From now on, it's Lou, because otherwise it'll drive
I
me
hope not.
nuts. So, Lou, before we get into your adjustments, tell us a little bit about yourself, how old you were when you went to prison, how long you were there, that kind of thing.
So I was arrested December 26th of 2002. I just had turned 19 years old and I was arrested for a shooting. Um, I ended up going to prison so I went in, I turned 19 the month before, and when I came out, I turned 39 the month after. So just shy of 20 years in prison.
So what was your life like before you went to prison? I mean, I don't assume you just woke up one day and ended up involved in a shooting, right? I mean, did you go to
No,
school?
so
Were you in college?
I was in school, but I didn't finish high school. I actually didn't finish high school because I'd gotten involved in gangs when I was about 15, 16, and from there my life started to really take a downturn. You know, it's funny because a lot of the people that I met in prison, especially in some of the groups we facilitated and stuff, and you sit down and talk, a lot of the guys honestly didn't have what I had. I had a dad at home, and I had a family that was instilling values in me that they value things like respecting others and loving people and things like that and hard work. But when I went outside of my house, things were just different in the neighborhood. So I started to gravitate towards the wrong people. And honestly, I started to become one of the wrong people. So from there, I ended up dropping out of high school at 16, no, 17. I went to adult ed for a little while, but when you have the mind of a child and they treat you like an adult as far as accountability and responsibility and saying, hey, you're on your own, you don't stick around for too long. So I ended up leaving that and trying to get various jobs, especially when I was like 17, 18. I had a daughter on the way. And because I had a record already at the time, it just wasn't working out. So I went back to what I know, as we say, and which was selling drugs and things of that sort.
Now, as long as I've known you, you've been very involved with your Christian faith. Was that something you
Yep.
had before you were incarcerated, but kind of walked away from it? Or did you just discover it while you were incarcerated and embraced it then?
I will say more so I believed but didn't fully understand, or not even fully. I didn't really understand too much as a kid growing up. One thing I will say, my it's a credit to my mom. When I left home, and my daughter was born, what she would do was pull up to my house and like my house phone's ringing and my cell phone's ringing, and she's like, "No, you're gonna come out here. It's Sunday morning. You're coming out here. You're getting my granddaughter dressed. Do whatever you have to do. You're going to church with me." And like I'm going to church with her, and then coming home and smoking a blunt right after. Like so, I didn't gravitate too much towards the faith aspect of it, but what I did like was anytime she had that day off, that Sunday off, and took me to church with her, I had a day of normalcy afterwards. Like I would go back to my parents' house with my daughter and we would just have a normal family day. And I kind of like that because it was an escape from the chaos. When I got arrested, I was already had been going to church with her, and I think when I had went into the county jail, and I was already starting to pray and things like that, talking to God, but I had a couple friends around me that were like, "Hey, listen, if you want to read, here's the Bible, figure it out," and just having the right people to lean on was a big help.
There's something that I find interesting being free now. And I think you're going to relate to this because, I'm an atheist and I've known you now, 18, 19 years. And you and I have had so many debates about so many subjects, and people, we get animated. And in prison, there's a lot of us that would do that. We get animated, we disagree, but it doesn't, we don't then hate each other. We go and we eat or whatever. So recently I posted something about religion, and you came and you responded, and, and we went back and forth a little bit, and there were other people involved. But I think that being in that environment in prison where we would engage in those discussions has in many ways prepared me for being out here and having disagreements with people and understanding that you can disagree with people. It doesn't mean you don't like them. And I just wonder if you've had the same experience both in and out.
Honestly, I've had the same experience for myself with mature adults, I should say. Um, I've found some even our age and older, but mostly a lot of the times I've found with my interactions with the younger generation, um, they will get really animated and emotional and like vehemently mean everything they say, and it's like, oh, it's not that serious. We're having a discussion. I think some communication skills are definitely lacking there, but like you said, we used to always talk about in prison how dealing with so many different personalities in any given day will help prepare us for things like this.
Yeah, for sure. So you spent, I think you said about 20 years, maybe a little bit more than 20 years in prison. If I correct me if I'm wrong, but you actually were originally sentenced to longer, but then you had your sentence cut short. So how
Yeah,
much shorter was your sentence than what it was originally?
I was initially sentenced to 30 years. So what they did was cut the last 9 years and 11 months off by a commutation.
So that's a pretty big shock to the system, right? When you're anticipating getting out, say in 10 years, and now you're getting out in 2 months, that's huge. What was that like psychologically? And I say that because most people would think, and I think to an extent, rightly so, that wow, I'm so happy I'm getting out. But that's not all there is, right? I mean, that when your life is a certain way for so long, and now everything's going to change. For me, that was a lot. I was still happy to be getting out. Don't get me wrong, of course, but there was a lot of fear too. What was your experience like finding out you were going to be released?
I think for me, more so, it was the excitement was what took over more than anything else. But I will say, coming home, there was the reality afterwards. Like, whoa, this is um, a lot more serious, and there's a lot more on us when we come home than expected. One of the things that I felt was the hardest thing in my transition was the halfway house, and it wasn't because of being in a halfway house was a problem for me. I had no problem there. It's better than prison.
Lou,
But
explain
the
what a
halfway
halfway
house I
house
was in,
is. What is a halfway house?
so a halfway house, normally when you have roughly 18 months or less left in your sentence, you're sent to what's called community supervision or community release. And it is a house run by staff that is not DOC, but can get you sent back to prison. So this house is supposed to prepare you for transitioning back into society. But what I found was this house was not prepared for people who had done a long time in prison and were not just in and out of prison, had a support system and had opportunities. I had several opportunities I had to turn down because of the halfway house, and I had to literally fight these people for school. I had my professor, my parole officer, and the director of the program in the room with my what's that position called? She's essentially counselor, but because they wouldn't allow me to go to school. They thought I was trying to scam them because class was in East Hartford and I was in Waterbury.
So they have rules about how long you can leave for, where you can go. I went through well, I didn't go through it, but Carlos went through a similar thing where he would have a job and they didn't want him going. And it, it, it seems like they put unnecessary restrictions on you, if the point is to help you to readjust, and that's why it's called a halfway house, halfway between freedom and prison, that they should actually be preparing you to work, to go to school, that sort of thing. But from what I can tell, and again, I've never been to one, but from the people that I've talked to that have, is that they actually are very restrictive and can impede your ability to succeed.
They can, and honestly, I think it's systemic due to the lack of training. Because the halfway house I was in, the people told me they were making 14.75 an hour. Like who are you really getting to work in there that is going to help me in my transition to society? That is making 14.75 an hour. Obviously, they're just like, hey, you want a job? Okay, I'm here. They even told me because my record is so old that I technically could go work in another halfway house
Yeah, nice.
because my record was old, that I would pass the background check.
Okay, so and how long were you at the halfway house for?
So I was initially supposed to be in there for, I was in there for 4 months. I was initially only supposed to be in there for two. And actually, I could have gotten out even sooner than that. I didn't know. At about the 1 month mark, I asked the parole officer who runs the house, how long do I have to stay here, considering that I was already over 95% of my time? So she didn't know that. And that was a revelation to her. So she was like, hold on, let me look it up. She looked in her phone. She goes, actually, you can get your package done right now. And it would take us 4 weeks to get everything cleared, go to your house. So I'm like, all right. I went to my counselor, said, hey, listen, she said to do the package now. She came in and said, yes, run his package now so we can get everything set. 4 weeks go by. I see this woman again. And mind you, during the time, I'm asking the counselor, like, hey, is there any news for me? Is there anything you need from me? Anything from my family? Any information? She's like, no, 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 we're set. The 4 weeks go by, 4 weeks and one day. The parole officer comes to the house. I asked her, hey, what's going on with my package? She's like, what are you talking about? So I give her my name. She's like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I said, well, it was you said 4 weeks, and yesterday made 4 weeks. She said, oh no, your package it restarted from last Thursday because your counselor messed up on the information, so she had to do it all over again. But yet she didn't tell me anything.
Oh my God, it sounds just like
Since
prison. Jesus.
Exactly. Since leaving that halfway house, honestly, the director, that counselor, and several other staff members were fired. They had the director messing around with guys in the house. The
Oh.
director was a homosexual man messing around with guys in the house, apparently. But it was just it was a mess. That place was not prepared for someone who actually wanted to transition into society. It's just a go-between.
So at some point, I see from your social media posts, you started working in a building cleaning job, right? To tell me a little bit about that
Oh,
and when you started doing it and what
that's
got you
actually my
into it.
business.
Oh, okay. Well, tell us about it.
Yes. So I had a person who was a friend of the family and like a friend since we were kids and stuff like that. And he owned his own roofing company. He still does. He owns his own roofing company. And I was working last year for a nonprofit doing higher education and prison advocacy work. And that's a whole nother thing to talk about. But during that time, I would go to this friend's office for like the quiet space because he was like, hey, you ever want to come and do your work from here? It's nice and quiet. You can put your laptop over here. So we started doing that. And I seen he needed help with some things. So I would try to pitch in when I can. And he's like, hey, listen, I don't have anyone else that I've tried this with friends with trying to bring them in so we can grow this. And essentially, he asked me if I would like to become his business partner, and we worked all that out. So now we have the Roof Ready Home Wash, which is an exterior cleaning service for properties, and we also have the roofing company.
Now, how does it compare? Because when we're working in prison, whether it be in industries or we were in the print shop together, the standards are not very high, right? I
Not at
mean,
all.
you can dick around all day, whatever you mess up, and it doesn't really matter. But now you're in a position where you've got to get it right, or the customers just go somewhere else. What is that
Absolutely.
like? psychologically to go from working jobs in prison to owning your own business, where now, your bills are dependent on you being successful?
That's what it is. If I don't hustle, I don't eat. And honestly, there are those expectations now, because it's like, all right, I can't degrade myself to the standard of industries. I need to actually approach every home as though it's my own, and I am the customer. What do I expect? And sometimes there's those frustrating moments of problem solving on the spot. And like, I've had times where I'm over here in the back of a house spraying everything down, everything's going good, and all of a sudden everything stops, and I go over there and I smell burning wires and the motor's burning out. Now I'm sitting here trying to figure out how to rewire this motor or go put another one on, while I have another job to go to that I'm probably going to be late to because of this. So it's constant communication with customers. It's definitely a lot, but honestly, I wouldn't trade it.
I don't
There's high
blame
risk,
you.
high reward.
Sure. Now, the people that you deal with, whether you're customers or anybody else, do people or have a lot of people that you've come in contact with, do they know that your story of having spent time in prison? And if so, what has been the reception? How have people reacted to you when they know?
It depends on the capacity. With this job, not really much, because there's not too much discussion going on with customers about personal lives and things like that. But I've had other jobs, like when I came out of the halfway house, I was working at Aldi, the grocery store, and I had a bracelet on and everything, but they couldn't see it. It was draped over. My pants were draped over it, and I had people coming to me like, "Oh, what up, gangster?" And I'm like, "What?" And looking at him like, don't approach me like that. What's the matter? What's going on here? And there were people telling me like, oh yeah, they were talking about you in the office, because one person looked me up because she thought she saw something on my ankle, looked me up, then went to the office personally to the assistant managers like, did you know this? And they were all like, yeah, we've been looked him up. We don't care.
You know,
But that right there felt like they were all just talking behind my back about it. Like, why didn't you guys all approach me about it?
when people do that, I don't know the extent to which they understand. Like, you're screwing with somebody's life at this point. It's not just your, like, people will say things to me. Like, I've had so many mean things said to me on social media. I generally don't care. But when
Mhm.
someone actually tries to screw with my life, that's a different story altogether. And that's
Absolutely.
like, what was the reasoning for the person going and saying, "Oh, did you know this?" Other than she's trying to do you harm. That's not cool in my view. I mean, I know we have to expect it. I mean, look, we made our own beds long ago, and that's part of it. And life is what it is, but that's still a pretty rotten thing for people to do.
Especially if you're gonna work alongside me and smile in my face the entire
Well,
time.
yeah, for sure. Okay, so you've got your own business, and you do seem to be doing well there. And do you have your own place yet?
Yes, I'm
Oh,
actually engaged now, Mike.
awesome! Congratulations.
Yes,
So
thank you.
that's actually coming out. I remember I was in what they call the Tier 4 program when we were at Osborne Correctional Institution, and it's supposed to be a drug program. And they had us do this exercise where they asked us, what are the things you look forward to doing when you get out of prison? And I stopped and I thought about it and I said, wow, I really don't know. Like, I'd been in jail since I was 21 years old. You know what I mean? Like, I have no idea what my interests are as an adult. And sure enough, when I got out, I mean, I had my girlfriend. So when I would be with her, everything was fine. But when I wasn't, I didn't know what to do with myself. Like, do I go to the movies? Do I go to the mall, the amusement park? I have no clue because everything has changed now. Did you
I get that.
experience anything like that? Like, where it's like, what the hell do I do with myself?
When I first came home, Mike, for about, I'll say this is out of the halfway house, I'll say for the first 3, 4 months, and it probably stopped because it got really cold outside. When I woke up, I'd have to brush my teeth, wash my face, and leave. I have to leave the house because I have the option to. Like it was just this need inside me to, I need to go. Whether I'm just at that time, I would go maybe to the gym or just go for a walk or something, go for a drive and go nowhere. It was just I need to leave because I have that option to, and I'm going to exercise that right. But I noticed like it was not an obsession, but it was like I was unconsciously doing it. And I had to sit back and think about that one day. Like, why do I have to get up and just walk out my house automatically? I'm in my own home. And that was weird for me. But the biggest adjustment I think for me, Mike, and I've talked to a few people about this, was it was social and it was with family. Because when I was in prison, I would call home, and we've talked about this before. How you call home, and 14 minutes is them ranting, and then the 1 minute bell pops, and they're going, "Oh, how you doing?" That was still going on. So it was like, okay, when I'm incarcerated, I can take on your problems. I have the time to sit there and think it out, figure out some sort of solution, several options, and call you back. Now I have my own life to figure out, and everything's coming at me so fast. But now I also have family. Like my parents were in the midst of a divorce when I came home, and it's everyone. It felt like everyone was going, "Oh, my problem solver is home. Here, take all of my stuff now," and I couldn't do that anymore. That was like my biggest burden.
Yeah, that's stressful. One question I hated, because I don't really like social things anyways. Like I'm not into large gatherings and stuff. I like a few people hanging out, whatever. So I went to a couple family functions, and the question I hate more than any is, so what was it like in there? Or what's it like now that you're out? Because the first of all, what was it like in there? Contrary to what people see on television, prison is boring, right? Like, what do you want me to tell you about ramen noodles? You know what I mean? Like prison is boring. It's by and large just the same thing every single day, like Groundhog Day, and it's just dull. And I also don't want to talk about that boring shit because it's just it doesn't interest me. Like I don't want to talk. What like you know that these guys were gossiping today? You know what I mean? I don't want to
Exactly.
do that. And then how are you adjusting? I'm okay. It's just not. I get that people have sort of a feeling of maybe a nervous energy, and they want to. They feel like they have to make conversation, but I felt like you don't.
Trying
You
to
don't
break
need.
the ice.
Yeah, you don't need to make conversation. You don't need to talk to me. It's fine. And given that they don't know me, that's what they would ask. So I guess what I want to know from you is, was there any particular line of questioning or a question or things that people would say to you that did to you what that did to me? Just made me like, oh,
Um, and I know this question is out of like genuine concern, but when it's asked too much, it's, "Are you okay?" For no reason. I'll just be sitting there like this, maybe watching TV or something. "Hey, you okay?" What did I give off that makes you feel like I may not be okay? I'm literally sitting here just relaxing. I That one gets on my nerves. But the what was it like? I, I haven't gotten that so much. What was it like? But the, "Hey, so everything okay out here now?" Like that's just
years ago, someone asked me, he would, every time I would see him, "Hey, you okay? You okay?" And I told him, "Would you stop asking me if I'm okay? Because you start making me think that I look sick or something. Like, am I giving
for
off a
real.
vibe? Is something wrong? What's happening?" And I start to worry, like what's that going? I
Absolutely.
really, that question, I don't like it either. Are you okay? Are you okay? It's like, no, stop. So we mentioned your faith. Have you been sticking with that and going to church since you've been out? Has
Absolutely.
that been a good part of your integration into society to have sort of that support system?
It has, because one, I've still maintained contact with Bishop McKissick. He's doing all right. He actually fell ill for a little while and was
All
in the
right, you
hospital,
got to
so
now
he's
tell people,
recovering.
because for those of us who did
Bishop
time,
Bishop
everybody
Bishop
knows who you're talking about.
Bishop
But for those that
McKissick,
didn't, Yeah, who is
Yes.
he?
Bishop McKissick was the chaplain, the lead chaplain in McDougal Correctional Institution. This was the only staff member you would see walking around smacking guys in the head, hugging on guys. He actually treated us like we were people, no matter who we were. And
Really nice guy
since
too,
then,
Lou.
this is absolutely, this is a man who I gravitated to as my spiritual father. Look to him for guidance, all kinds of things. He helped me a lot in my journey. And when I came home, I made sure I wanted to keep contact with him. He's even since he had fallen ill, I had to go see him in the hospital and things like that. That kind of broke my heart seeing that. But other than that, the my fiance, when we got together, she asked me to come to the church that her family was going to. I was like, all right, no problem. I'll go over there. And it happened to be the church that fed my neighborhood, like the one that has and they still have it today, the pantry on Fridays that people are in line waiting for. Like it's crazy because the building I was born in is right here. Across the street is that church, and then two more buildings down is where my case happened. And then the courthouse is like not even a quarter mile up the street. So everything's kind of playing out right there in like a quarter-mile radius. But that definitely has been a big part of my journey and a big part of my integration as well.
You know, Bishop McKissick, he used to be Reverend McKissick. And anybody that's
Yes.
been at McDougal, he would just walk around the building block to block, friendly with everybody, wasn't the type of guy to push his religion on you or try to convert you or anything else. Just, hey, how's it going, my man? What's happening? You know, really, really nice guy. And is he doing okay now?
He's recovering. It's a slow
Okay, good.
recovery.
Okay,
He had some heart issues, but he's
okay,
doing
that's
all
good.
right.
So you've mentioned your fiance a few times. How did you meet, and how was that adjustment gone being involved in an actual adult relationship? You know, last time you were free,
So
you were a kid, now you're an adult.
so we actually met when we were kids. We met when we were 14 at the Puerto Rican parade in Waterbury. And it's funny because when we end up getting together again, was the next, they hadn't thrown a Puerto Rican parade in between those two times, and they ended up throwing another one. But yeah,
Did you
we've
think
known
it
each
was
other
for
since we were
you?
kids. Absolutely. So we've known each other when we were teenagers. We didn't keep in contact too much while I was incarcerated. Well, at all, I should say, while I was incarcerated. I ended up, weirdly enough, one of the guys we were incarcerated with was calling. I was calling him when he had went home, and he was working in the place she managed. And he was like, "Oh yeah, do you know my manager Stacy?" And I was like, "Oh, I've known her since we were kids. Tell her I said hi." He said, "I'm gonna give you the phone." And it was just basic, "Hey, how you doing?" Just checking on, and that was it. Didn't speak to her again. And then when I was in the halfway house, that same person was like, "Yo, I think you guys would make a good couple. You should reach out to her." I'm like, I'm not really looking for that right now. I'm trying to get my life right. But I reached out as a friend, like just, "Hey, how you doing?" And that's where she helped alleviate some of the frustration while I was in the halfway house, just mentally, because she would be that sounding board, be there to listen. But honestly, there are parts in just the adult relationship that I wasn't used to, that I'm just like, there's big adjustments, especially now with technology. What was weird to me was coming off the bracelet and then sharing my location. Like that to me was, she was like, "Babe, we should share locations because it's what people do, I guess." And she was like, "Safety precautions and this and that." And to me, it was just like, at first, like, "What? You're tracking me now?" That's kind of how I received it at first, and we've had ups and downs, but like any relationship. But one thing I can say, because of this is an adult relationship, we stick through everything.
The technology, surprisingly for me, wasn't so surprising. People ask me, was it a big shock, the technology? And the thing is, it's like we weren't locked in a box. I mean, we had newspapers, radio, television. I'm talking to people. So even though I hadn't used all the, gadgets and whatnot, I knew they were there. And I basically knew what they did. And then we even had the tablet. So it wasn't as shocking to me as what I think people would have expected. Did it surprise you or was it overwhelming to you?
Um, I'll say there were times where I wanted to toss my phone
I can
right out the
relate to
window,
that.
but the only times I would say where there was that big learning curve for the technology was when I was working for the nonprofit, because it was just so it was a remote job, so much of it was over the computer and just learning new software, trying to figure things out. But they were patient with that. So that's one thing they said from the beginning. Listen, we know we're trying to give you a soft landing, so to speak. We know that you don't know any of this tech. We will teach you as we go along, and we're never going to hold that against you for not knowing how to do something on the computer. So that was a blessing.
So
But yeah, there were definitely times.
before I let you go, what does the future hold for you? What are your goals? What are you looking forward to?
Um, so this year, actually, my goals by the end of this year, I want to buy a three-family investment property. I will be married by the end of this year. The other aspects, and I would say one thing to cover on the adjustment is, I have my daughter. My relationship with my child, I wasn't there for so long, so there's been so many ups and downs with that. I think that has been like the biggest battle in my heart. So there's been so many ups and downs with that. That's one of my biggest goals, for us to be close like we're supposed to be.
How has it been integrating that into everything else? Because you come out of prison and you have all these things that you have to do. You have to get a career going. You have to learn the technology. You've got the relationship with your fiance, place to live, but you also have this relationship that you want to put together with your daughter. That has to have been a big struggle for you to kind of bring all that
Oh,
together.
it's tough because she's 22 years old. She's working her own full-time job and things, but the communication is the hardest part, because oftentimes there's things she has on her heart she doesn't want to say, and then until it all builds up, and then it just all comes out, and it comes out a lot worse than intended. But I'm trying to work through those things and be patient with it. You know, it's a process, Mike. It's definitely a process, but I think honestly that's been one of my biggest mental and emotional battles.
The thing is, and it's not to absolve you of anything. You at 18, we're adults, even though we're not fully developed. We still make our choices. So I'm not making excuses, but I will say this: you were 19 years old, right? Something that helped me in relation to my own parents. I got my birth certificate. I had it sent to me while I was in prison, and when I looked at it, I saw how old my parents were when I was born. And my father was 22 and my mother was 20. And at this point, I was already in my 30s. And I'm just like, wow, it never occurred to me how young they were when they had me and how, ill prepared they were to deal with another human life. Now, that doesn't excuse the fact that they weren't good parents, but it did help me kind of put things in perspective and say, okay, where was I when I was 20? You know what I mean? And I hope that your daughter can see that, if she doesn't already, that you went to jail when you were younger than she is now. You know what I mean? You were a
Hmm.
teenager. That's tough. All right. So,
Honestly, I
oh, go
had
ahead.
that same revelation, Mike, for the forgiving my own mother for the
Really?
things that happened when I was a kid. I was raised by my stepmother because my mother left me when I was 2 years old. And I sat there one day, I was in prison, and I was like, wow, she was 19 when she left. She was on drugs. She was 19 when she left. I was 19 when I came to prison. Like, now that I see what I was back then, I kind of get it. And then it also helped to see 19-year-olds that were in there with us as we already matured, and we're looking at them like, wow, was I like that?
Yes.
But yeah, that's that's definitely something I hope she can realize. She has said to me before, like in our good times, where she was like, you know what? And this is when she was about 19, 20. She's like, I see some of my crash out friends, and I start to think like, man, my dad was out there doing some of the same stuff they're doing. I kind of see the young mindset, and I get it. But then there's those times where she doesn't get it. So
Wow.
it's a
Well,
battle.
hopefully you keep working and it'll come together. So, Lou, where can people find you on social media and promote your company a little bit? What's the name of it? How do they contact you if anybody needs a good cleaning?
So Roof Ready Home Improvements and Roof Ready Home Wash, you can go to myroofready.com to book a free inspection as well as a free quote for new roof, roof repair, um, gutters, gutter cleaning, gutter installation, gutter repair, gutter guard installation as well, and exterior cleaning. We cover all of your exterior cleaning and outside needs for your home. Other than that, you can find me on Facebook at Louie Lou, Louielu, Louie Lou, and I also have Roof Ready Home Wash as one of my Instagram accounts as well. Or you can reach out directly, 475-316-7482.
All right. Lou, thanks a lot for being here with us. It's been great talking to you.
I appreciate you, Mike. Good to see you again, bud.
For now, this is the Rational Egoist signing out. Till next time.